Comfortable on the roads. We're getting into a sloppy spring. Michelin Endurance XT silicone wiper blades are real world proven. Get them at Walmart. Last 2 times longer. Ed Werder, trust this guy, know him well, said a source within the Cowboys told him Dak and the Cowboys are getting closer to the negotiation point where they're going to resolve the seemingly never-ending contract with Dak Prescott, and it says Prescott will emerge as the highest-paid NFL player. It should be noted, Travis Frederick, his great center, the Cowboys led the NFL in yards per rush with him, 22nd without him, is no longer a Cowboy and retired. Left tackle Tyron Smith does no longer play 16 games. He's a 13 a game player in the NFL. Those are their 2 best offensive linemen. Zach Martin's also older, but still elite. My take on this is the Cowboys now have, and I'll read these off a paper here, 7 positions where they're top 3 in player compensation. If this deal comes through, quarterback, running back, left tackle, right guard, defensive end, wide receiver, linebacker. It was 8 with Travis Frederick. He just retired. What is the problem with that? In the NFL, you do not have to be great at everything. That's not the game. What you have to be, you have to avoid being terrible or bad at anything. This is the Patriots' genius. They're rarely dominant in any one thing. They're never terrible at everything or anything. Why does that matter? Because football, more than baseball and basketball, is about coaching. Now, I still think quarterbacks are more valuable than a coach, but the NBA, where LeBron goes, they win. Right? Pat Riley's important, but he wasn't winning titles the year before LeBron got there, right? In the NBA, Phil Jackson, I think the last series he ever coached in the playoffs, I could be wrong, I think he got swept by the Dallas Mavericks. He didn't have enough players. So Red Auerbach's not doing anything without Bill Russell. Baseball, it's about your staff. It's your payroll. The Yankees have 27, 28 world championships. They've always had more stars. They have more history. They have more bankroll. There's no salary cap. There's a reason the Dodgers and the Yankees, you get the point. But in football, salary cap, it's a hard cap, not a lot of loopholes. You need a coach and a quarterback. Those 2 are the only 2 that you can point to and say they win. Coaching is so important in football, and I think mostly so good, that if you have a hole, by the time you get to week 12, 13, 14, like Belichick always says, this season's about post-Thanksgiving. That's when you figure out who can coach. That New England's been average many years, slightly above average pre-Thanksgiving. They're great, usually until last year, post-Thanksgiving, because they were 4-5 their last 9 games. They're old now and unathletic, and, there's limitations. Brady yelling, screaming at his players that can't get open. So I'll give you an example. The Saints have a real hole. They can't throw the ball downfield. They couldn't do it with Teddy. They don't do it with Drew Brees. They're still really good. But by the time the playoff comes around, the last 3 years, they've been eliminated by the Vikings twice and the Rams. Why? Because they averaged 350 yards of offense. And they scored about 22.5 points a game. In the regular season, they can drop 29, 32, 41. Their offense, not their defense, was the liability against the Rams and the Vikings twice. They just couldn't get enough big plays. That's their hole. The Dallas Cowboys are in a situation right now, losing Jeff Heath at safety and Byron Jones at corner. Their secondary wasn't great with Byron Jones. So now they're going to have to address it in the draft because they didn't upgrade it massively in free agency. And if they whiff or they have, are you going to ask a rookie corner to walk into the NFC and dominate? The Cowboys are a left tackle injury, Tyron Smith, or a secondary injury away from being dreadful on the O-line and regrettable in the secondary. You can't do that in the NFL. You don't have to be great at everything. You can't be terrible at anything. Coaches will attack it relentlessly. So if Dak's the highest paid player, you have 7 of the highest paid players at their position in the NFL. We all know it's a salary cap and you're going to be thin, but go ask the Rams. Rams lost Gurley and a right guard, not the same football team. Even with McVay, even with all those receivers, Rams may have the 2nd or 3rd best receiving core, may have the best in the entire NFL. Couldn't move the ball. Joy Taylor with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
So Tom Brady is facing a new challenge as he starts the next chapter of his career in Tampa. Tom Curran asked Brady if those who think he will fail with the Bucs were motivating him to succeed, but he downplayed the effect that the haters have on him. He said, "I'm always motivated to do the best I can do for many reasons. The main motivation is that the love of the sport and that I want to continue doing something I love to do. It's not any more difficult than that." Well, that's a very nice response, but as we know, Tom Brady kind of has an eternal chip on his shoulder for many, many reasons. I will say this, sometimes haters kind of feel like they are more important to your career or your success than they really are. I think anybody who does something at the highest level, of course, does it because they love it. Like, you didn't get into this business because somebody told you couldn't get into this business. You were born to be in this business. You were doing play-by-play of your own shots in the backyard when you were like 7.
Yeah.
So, I didn't get in this business because someone told me I couldn't do it. But every once in a while, somebody says something to you, or you don't get a job, or something happens, and you're like, I might get up a little extra early from now on to just, make sure that they know that they were wrong. And whether you don't ever want to say that, but I do think that he is continuing to play because he wants to play. He said he wants to play till 45. He's still capable of doing that physically, and I think we're all excited to see what he does. So, but some interesting news from Fox Bet. The Bucs NFC South odds moved up from, they were plus 550 to plus 180 after the Brady move. So they're currently second behind the Saints, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And their over-under moved from 7.5 to 9 after Brady signed.
Isn't that interesting? So, we said last year they were 7-7, and it was Jameis mistakes why they didn't go 8-8 or 9-7. So I would take the over on 9 wins, and I'd take the under on 8.5 for New England. I feel absolutely strong about both those picks. I think Tampa's I think their schedule could be tough if they get the wrong teams in September. They need a break, a scheduling break in September, because we're not going to have a camp, and we could have a shortened, exhibition season. So I do think Tampa could be choppy in September, but they're going to figure it out pretty quickly because they just have too many good players on offense.
Right, and of all the teams that are going to be at a disadvantage, which everyone is going to be at a slight disadvantage because they're not going to have the offseason workouts, but of all the teams coming in with a new quarterback, I'm going to give Brady the nod in that spot because you can only imagine that Brady has all of the possible information that he can have already, and he's sitting down watching tape. So Cam Newton seems to be sending another pretty clear message about his release from the Panthers. He posted some more photos and videos on Instagram showing his workouts, and in one of them, Cam says, "They gave up on me." Chargers quarterback Tyrod Taylor also posted pictures working out with Cam Newton to his Instagram story yesterday. So I do think Cam is clearly putting some imagery and messages out there that, he has a chip on his shoulder and he's working very hard. And I think he's kind of trying to change the narrative of that he's not focused or he's not dedicated to football. And to be honest, I never felt like Cam Newton wasn't dedicated to football. I think that you can have interest in more than one thing in life. And we don't criticize guys for being into fishing. We don't criticize guys for, whatever their hobbies are, unless it's something that we either can't relate to or is, in Cam's case, kind of eccentric. Like, if you don't want to like Cam, there's lots of things that you can pick at when it comes to Cam Newton. Overall, we know he's a good guy. I mean, he was a Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee this year. Like, he does a lot for his community. He's always playing hurt, but whatever happened in Carolina happens, and he is clearly upset with them. According to Fox Bet, the odds for his next team are the Jags at plus 250, Chargers plus 275, Redskins plus 600, Dolphins plus 700, Patriots plus 900. I don't know where he ends up, though.
Yeah, well, it should be noted, every year, I don't have a data point in front of me, but every year, about 7 to 8 starting quarterbacks get hurt. Cam's going to play this year.
Right, yes.
It's the idea. I mean, Cam's just simply too talented not to play. The question becomes, you probably wouldn't bring him in as a backup, a celebrity back. He's just like, if Baker fails in Cleveland, he's too big to be a backup. There's too much noise with Baker. Tebow ran into this. He was like a celebrity, Some of it his own doing, some of it his faith-based followers. But Cam's going to play because a quarter of this league by November 3rd.
It always happens.
If you're looking at an average backup or Cam's on the market, you're going to get Cam because, by the way, coaches want to retain their jobs. And if it's Cam and a backup, you're going to go with Cam. So he'll get a job. Is anybody going to build around him? And that market appears to have dried up at this moment. But he'll be in this league.
Absolutely.
He's too talented.
So if and when the current NBA season resumes, LeBron would not be happy if the league jumped straight into the playoffs, and he shared a plan for how to get the season back on track on the Road Trippin' podcast with Allie Clifton, Channing Frye, and Richard Jefferson.
One thing you can't just do, just go straight to the playoffs. It discredits the 60-plus games that guys had, fighting for that position. So we got Portland, you got Memphis, you got New Orleans that's kind of,
Sacramento.
In Sacramento, tinking around there. I mean, if there's 5 or 10 games left, why not the 5? Why not those guys battle it out? How about just make them play each other all 5 games?
So it was also suggested that Memphis and Sacramento have a 3-game series along with Portland and New Orleans, and then the winners play in another series to determine who plays the Lakers in the first round of the NBA playoffs.
I think it's going to be fewer games, not more. Good luck with all these modifications, adding games. I think everybody's going to have to take a long, hard look and owning to we're going to have just a playoff season. I hope they don't modify that too much, but the NBA guys are talking like we're right around the corner going to get this thing done, and I do not see that. Mark Cuban joins me in 30 minutes from now. I don't see that. I think the NBA is going to have a potential playoff season. That is it, and it'll last about 7 weeks. Joy Taylor with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
Ryan Rosillo is my buddy. We used to work at another place. Now we don't. He's at The Ringer, the Ryan Rosillo podcast, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. Not that podcast, but our show. How you doing, bud?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. This will be shorter than your podcast, which goes a long time. I went to Ryan Rosillo's. He lives by me. I did a podcast for like 90 minutes, and we just sat there. We might as well opened up beers. It was fantastic. So I was saying this, and I'm going to ask Cuban about this. The NBA tends to have a younger audience, more into social media, a little more political, a little more socially conscious. The NFL's got an older fan base. We watch the games. We don't watch highlights. The NFL doesn't give a rip, Ryan. They'll do free agency. They'll do their schedule breakout. They'll do their draft. They don't give a rip what Twitter says. If they did, Kaepernick would be in the league. But I do wonder about the NBA. If they rush back, and there's some corona spreading, right? And there's corona breaks out within the league. They could face a massive social media backlash with their young audience. Now, you have great connections to the NBA. Where are they right now with when do we go back? Do we go back? What are your guys saying, your sources?
So the last time I talked to, the thing that's tough about calling about this stuff is you're calling a lot of guys going, hey, man, I don't know. But the most definitive thing that I got was probably the middle of this month, talking to kind of league sources where it was just, hey, it's March 15th now. We're 60 days at least away from even thinking about getting this thing going again. And then I think on that day or within 24 hours, it had changed to Woj having a report that it was 90 days. So there's all sorts of factors. There's how many games they have to play before they can go to the playoffs, because everybody agrees, teams, players, the execs, that they need some games. Now, I don't know. The Lakers are sitting there in that LeBron cut saying, yeah, hey, why don't you guys battle it out in 2 playoff rounds and then play us playoffs? Not that the Lakers are going to lose to an 8 seed anyway, but that's not going to happen. The body needs to find a way to get adjusted. But the other part that the NBA has pointed out numerous times is arena availability. That's really one of the biggest issues here. So if you just do this thing that I've always thought, like maybe the NBA just runs through August and owns all those dead weeks sports-wise nationally, but then they have to worry about things like Milwaukee having the Democratic National Convention in the middle of July there. Just the logistics of it is far more complicated than just getting some start dates. So even though everybody has a different way to figure this thing out, you're trying to answer a question that you don't even know really what the question is, because nobody knows what a realistic start date even is.
Some of these owners are very well off. They're not leveraged like a Mark Cuban. James Dolan's not leveraged, but there are a lot of new NBA owners over the last 10 years. I know Robert Sarver for the Suns, was cash poor, I was told at some point a couple years ago. I wonder if there's real desperation from the ownership group to push on Adam Silver. Do you think he's sensing that from some of his owners?
Well, I'm sure some are. Like, whenever we try to think about this, like, I think we're talking about 30 guys that are close to being billionaires. You know, some are, some aren't. Some are just on paper, which is always a good thing to point out. I'm sure some of these guys want to get this thing going. You know, the weird thing is like the NFL, and it's a great point about the NFL NBA, because normally the NFL used to always have to kind of like run the lead block on all the reactionary stuff because the NFL would do it, and then the NBA would be like, oh, by the way, this is our concussion protocol. While this league's getting destroyed, the NBA is in the midst of it, so the NFL can sort of draft off of this and try to figure out, okay, like what's working, what isn't working.
Yes.
But, you know, it's a really good point because, you know, the NBA is trying to do this on the fly where the NFL can kind of just plan and not worry about September right now, or at least, you know, make a decision. So when I think about owners pushing this, you're right, but I think the players are probably going to be pushing for this too because it's a partnership. You know, it's basketball-related income. That's what this whole thing, the whole math equation is. How much money do I make? I make my 48+% cut. That's what the players fight for. That's what the players fight for in these CBAs. So, you know, we've heard that they were getting their checks April 1st. We don't know what's going to happen after that. And you're going to have a lot of players going, hey, I know things are bad, but, you know, I also don't want to lose 20-something% of my salary this year because that's just, you know, that's how motivated people are despite how terrible it is what's going on around us. So I think it's going to be collectively everyone trying to get these games going once the numbers start getting real.
Yeah, and, you know, I know nobody wants to play in an empty arena, but let's be honest about this. I was told by a source I trust that an NBA team doctor had told a team in the league currently that had a player that had tested that, guys, you're incredibly low risk. For whatever reason, this virus is much more punitive to older Americans. At one point, Italy's average death was 79 and a half years old, and the average Italian death is 81. So, you know, I do wonder, this whole don't play with fans thing, I'm okay with it, Ryan. I just think you tighten up the shot, you pipe in some noise, your TV partners figure it out. Like, what do you make of that?
Well, there's no question it's weird, right? I heard Barkley on with you saying, you know, just the idea of being in a playoff game and not having the crowd, like, you can't do that. Well, okay. And then, yes, there's a social aspect of, like, making decisions that seem cold and seem motivated by money, but that's kind of what's going on. I mean,
right.
You know, if you're, like, if we're being real here, doing the real discussion that these guys are having behind closed doors, they're going, okay, how can we find a way to not lose all of our playoff television inventory, okay? Because our TV partners want to are still inside, you know, you got to think how a programmer is going to think, and they're going to go, we want to put this stuff on television. So even if it's not ideal, like anybody that's sitting here going, I have this perfect solution, no one has that perfect solution. So I would imagine that the TV partners, the league, and then even the players are going, this is what you're going to lose monetarily if we do nothing, and this is what we can salvage if we do something. And I imagine those are the things they're already planning out.
You know, I said yesterday, there's never been a great movie with a bad ending. People never hold it against LeBron. His first title in Miami, it was strike shortened. But the last 10 minutes of the movie was D. Wade, Bosh, and LeBron winning his first title. And that's all we talk about. What a glorious year it was. My takeaway, if I'm the NBA, and just, I don't know if it's a question, but if you have a chance for LeBron to hold up a trophy in a Laker uniform, Ryan, nobody 20 years from now, that's the iconic picture. I think that it would be one thing if you know, the Indiana Pacers and, you know, a small Oklahoma City were the number one seeds, and you know, you're thinking to yourself, there's a lot of risk here. I wonder, you know, Ryan, if the end of the movie's good, LeBron Laker jersey, I think there is some risk maybe you have to take on it. Right?
Okay, so let me, because I was thinking about this. Let me counter it this way, though.
Okay.
Do you think the NBA, like if the Pacers were on pace to win 70 games, do you think they'd be like, who cares? We'll just cancel the season?
No, but if you no. But
okay.
You know how decisions are made at big corporations. A lot of times you're in that room for an hour, and they are go either way. And the last guy talking swings the room. LeBron in a Laker uniform holding up a trophy, that is incredible NBA imagery to salvage a year with Kobe's tragic death, the China mess, and the virus, isn't it?
Look, it's a positive. It's certainly a positive, but I think you would agree with me here. It is not, if you mapped out a ranking of the most important factors on
Right.
whether or not they can bring this season back. I think it is the image, the story, how it's remembered. All those things are accurate. I just couldn't even imagine it's even close to the top 10 reasons why they try to bring this thing back.
All right. Well, I'm a talk show host. I have the right to be wrong. Okay.
You got a lot of time to fill.
You're telling me. I only got about 3 minutes left. Let's go to this. Burrow-Tua debate. Where are you at on that?
I want to start with you because I know you too well. You may not like this, but you're a Tua guy, and I too like Tua. If Tua were healthy, I'd prefer Tua over Burrow.
Yes.
You know how much I love LSU. I went to 5 of their games this year, including the playoffs and everything. But when you I'm afraid that what you're doing is that because you're now a Tua guy, you're a big time Tua guy, that on your path to Tua acceptance and campaigning, you've decided to trash the opponent. And here's a weird concept. I think you can like both guys. I like Burrow a lot. You described him once as Herbert without the arm. And I'm telling you, man, Burrow has whatever that unquantifiable thing that we've definitely used wrong in the past and screwed up with picks. Like when it comes to quarterbacks, I'm not going to guarantee anybody in the first round other than Andrew Luck because 50% of them are absolute busts anyway. But I don't think you need to downgrade Burrow to upgrade Tua. Because if they were both healthy, I'd agree. I'd take Tua. But Burrow, whether it's the completion percentage, which is chucks down the field. I mean, that guy was taking chances. The way he commanded things, the way he came and just changed the way that LSU looked at themselves in the mirror with his attitude. There's that thing there that when he's in the huddle, the other 10 guys are going to believe in him. And that's not always automatic with a lot of these other big arm guys.
Yeah, I've sort of evolved on Burrow, and mostly because I'm just talking to a bunch of guys. My GMs are split on him. I think he's Tony Romo. I think he is a winner.
That'd be great.
Yeah, here's my question. Could Tony Romo overcome the Bengals ownership? In maybe now the most talented division in football, because say what you want about the Browns, their offensive personnel after they figure out left tackle is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
I haven't heard you talk about the Browns much. That surprised me.
Okay. We got to do this again. See, I only get 10 minutes with you because, I got, whatever. And
when I saw Cuban and Joe Buck on the list, I was like, okay, my second's shorter, but that's all right.
I'll barely talk to Buck. I'll give him 3 minutes. How's that? But Cuban, I'm giving 20. I'm not going to lie to you.
You should.
All right.
You should. Thanks, man.
Good talking to you, buddy. My friend Ryan Russillo. Mark Cuban is top of the hour. Kirk Herbstreit came out and said something I disagree with, and I'll tell you why. That's coming up. When it comes to scoring great hires for your business, you may be up against a few obstacles, like an overwhelming amount of resumes, too many applicants, but not enough of the right ones. That's where ZipRecruiter comes in. No matter the industry, manufacturing to healthcare to business services, ZipRecruiter makes hiring faster and easier. And now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/herd. You post a job, send out to over 100 top job sites. They have matching technology, very powerful. It allows them to invite applicants to apply to your job. 4 to 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within a day. How's that? Try it for free now. ZipRecruiter.com/HERD. It is the smartest way to hire in 2020. ZipRecruiter.